It's an absolute delight to be able to stand here and introduce Sonny Vu, our guest speaker today. You're in for a treat. You may have followed the news about startup companies in Silicon Valley. You may already be familiar with him and his product then. You may have followed news about the hot new fashion trends. You may be familiar with his company. You may have followed news about the hot new technologies that are creating a whole new wealth of product opportunities. You may be familiar with his company. I think the name, the shine of this new product kind of says it all. The shine, it's got style, it's got panache, it's got guts, and it's packed with smarts. And I think in a lot of ways, Sonny, I have to say it describes you, and we're just delighted. You know, my temptation to introducing you was the problem of where do I start? Do I start with, well, 7 languages that you speak, or do I start with 5 different schools and the PhD from MIT and working with the world-famous Noam Chomsky on linguistics? Do I start with Microsoft Research? Do I start, I mean, the 3 technology companies that you've started already, Agamatrix that shipped 1 billion biosensors? I mean, that's not where I started. I want to start with talking about you and what you have to share with us today. We're just delighted, and we look forward to what you have to share with us. Thanks, Sonny.
Cool. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. It sounds almost like a boxing rink introduction, which is awesome. Yeah, I'm afraid who's in the other corner, you know? So I just thought I would, first of all, I know not everybody likes to raise their hand and ask questions and whatnot, so I figured you could just like tweet to me a question if it occurs to you during the talk. But I wanted to give a little bit, talk about a few things here, just give you a little bit of background of where I'm coming from, and just tell you some stories. Stories actually mostly about failure and some of the things that I've learned over the years in doing the different startups, different jobs, working with different people. And then I want to talk to you about the notion of purpose and why that's important in what we do at Misfit and what I do, and then just open it up to Q&A. So. Three takes, this is my 3rd startup now after I dropped out. So I actually don't have a PhD. I do PhD, ABD, which a lot of people don't know what that means. So they assume I have a PhD in some field called ABD. It just means all but dissertation, meaning I wasn't able to focus long enough to get my degree. But I dropped out to start my first company, Firespout, which is a natural language processing company. And it was some awesome technology. It was great for VC demos, raised a lot of money, and it's basically a failure because we were not able to productize fast enough. And now we were able to sell the company to a large search engine in the end, and were able to power their search results and whatnot. So they got the benefit of it for a good price. But by and large, investors lost a lot of money investing in me. The second time around, so I went back to school like a good kid. Parents were delighted. Thank God, you're going back to school. Get your PhD, all right? And I dropped out a few weeks later, much to their dismay, and I started the second company. And I just knew I wanted to start a company with my partner Sridhar again. And so we did that. And I'll show you some pictures. That's part of the stories I'm going to show you. And that's actually gone pretty well. We kind of, one thing led to another. We ended up building this medical device business that's done really well, and it continues to do well. We did blood glucose meters and strips for people with diabetes. So anyone here know anyone with diabetes? Yeah, pretty much everyone. Good. It's, well, not good, but it is true that diabetes is a pandemic. And that was the community we had a chance to serve over the last decade. That was a lot of fun. And then I had the good fortune of running into John Sculley, the former CEO of Apple and Pepsi, about 3 years back, and we had a chance to get to know each other. And one thing led to another, and we ended up starting a company together, Misfit Wearables, which is where I'm at right now. And so the jury's still out in terms of whether we're successful or not. We're only 2 years old. But I wanted to share with you some stories, if anything, to encourage you, because I was a college student too at one point in life, and staring into the the bright future / abyss of getting my first job, and just wondering what am I going to do when I grow up? Oh wait, I've already grown up, and trying to figure out how I'm going to, if I can even get a job, and what kind of job would I get. But I want to share with you a few stories about how we got Matrix going, and in doing so, you can see how we reacted to failure and whatnot. And the way that's tied in, I guess, to the proverbial first job out of college search is, well, there's a lot of potential paths out there. And I think to the extent that you understand what the values you're going to hold on to, the cultures that you want to be a part of, I think those are some of the lessons I want to talk about in terms of what's important to look for, and I guess in a sense how to think about that search. So, but back to the story. So about 12 years ago now, it was 2 years ago, we started here. So this is my partner Sridhar. We were in a 1-bedroom apartment, and we actually built this wall out of homosote, which is this thick paper basically, and I lived behind that wall, and then Sridhar actually got the real room. I ended up paying the same amount of rent as him. I don't know how that happened, but so if you pan the camera, that's me, and so this is our room. This is our, we just wanted to do a startup together. We knew we just wanted to work together, and we actually, so I'm a mathematician by training, and Sridhar is an electrical engineer, and so we didn't really know much else. And so we, and then after exploring a number of different business ideas, we ended up deciding to get into the healthcare space, and in particular diabetes. And so we were going to invent the next big thing for diabetes. And so we figured out a way to making glucose meters twice as accurate, meaning these devices that can tell you what your blood sugar is just through better math. And people didn't really believe us because most of the innovations were done by chemists and whatnot. And so no one told us it was really hard to do, so we attempted it, and we built this prototype, and it kind of worked. And so we actually got funding, but we couldn't get any money, so we were kind of stuck. And eventually one thing led to another, and we ran into an investor who happened to be an endocrinologist, a diabetes doctor, and he invested in us. And as a result, him and investors in my previous company, that's right, investors who lost money in us, invested in us once again, we had some odd conversations because we actually said, are you sure you want to invest in us? Because we did kind of lose a lot of your money last time around. And, but they believed in us, and we maintained a reputation throughout that whole process. And so they trusted us again. So the perfunctory T-shirt celebration for having raised a tiny round of financing, we were able to move into our luxurious basement apartment office now. And it just turned out that making glucose meters more accurate was actually not a very good idea. Because glucose meters were given away for free. It's like making better inkjet printers. There's probably some value in there, but it's really about making a better inkjet cartridges, because that's where you really make your money, the razor blade model. And so we decided to make strips. We said, okay, well, if that's where the money is and that's where the revenue is, then so let's do that. And so we actually made our own glucose meters, our own glucose strips, these sensors. Turned out that it was really hard to do that. And so we were stuck once again. And we really didn't know what to do, because we did everything that people said we should do, right? And we really had to think through what our next steps were going to be. And so we actually went overseas and bought strips that were not accurate enough to be sold in the US market, but with our system was actually accurate enough to pass through FDA. So we actually went overseas and bought other people's strips. So no one had ever really done this before, but that was all we could do. And so we learned quickly from that, and we got, and then as a result, we built a product that worked, that now we didn't have to make our own strips, bought strips from someone else with our system, worked really well. And with that, we got funding, and we were able to grow the company. This is where the offices that we moved into. And we eventually shipped our first product in literally 4 years after starting the company. not quite .com speed, right? But we did make it eventually. And we were stuck again because it turned out that trying to make your own brand was which is what we try to do here, was a very costly mistake because developing your own brand is a very expensive proposition. So we pivoted again, and we ended up doing a private label business, meaning we got other companies to market the product for us under their brand. And that worked really well. And so demand went through the roof. People loved the fact that they could get products that were basically half the price at twice the performance. And so we went back to Asia, built a giant factory, one of the largest in Asia doing this kind of thing. And so it was a good business for a few years. And then along came the mobile revolution, and we had some inklings that this would be a big deal. So we decided to make an app that you could enter your glucose meters readings into, and you could store them and share it with people. One of the first medical apps actually on the App Store. And then so we said, oh, wouldn't it be great to make a glucose meter that works with the iPhone? So we did that. And it became one of the world's first hardware medical devices that works with the iPhone. And we had to get it through FDA and through Apple. So we had a lot of fun doing that, and that opened the way to a big deal with a big drug company. This is the launch event. They spent in aggregate more money in those 4 days than we spent in the first 4 years of our existence. Big pharma budgets. And so in looking back, we've really had a chance to celebrate like a lot. I mean, just think through, gosh, we've really failed a lot and we've really gone through a lot of things. And it was about, admitting to the failure and saying, okay, this is not working. We have to try something else and just keep going. Like I said, Sridhar and I, we were 20-somethings starting a medical device company. I mean, I'm a linguist, right? So only in America can something like that happen. And but it gave us a chance to learn and grow as people. And it gave us a chance to redesign a category that was kind of big and stodgy. There were literally 30 competitors when we started the company. And there were 72 competitors by the time we got the first product to market. Okay, so don't tell me about crowded spaces when when there are situations like that, because this was definitely a crowded space. But the fact is, good execution, focus on focus on product and great user experiences, it paid off. It's a consumer business, so those things matter. What I wanted to, those are just some stories from the last 10 years when we were growing my last company and the last business. And through it, we learned a lot of things. We learned, in the first company, we hired based on IQ. So we tried to get really smart people. And we got a bunch of smart people. And we had a lot of social problems because they were just really smart. And the second company, we said, that's it. We got to get experience. Let's get people with lots of experience. And we got some really great people. And we also got some people with not 20 years of experience, but 1 year of experience 20 times, meaning they never really learned. And that was actually worse because then it's like, oh, you got to do it this way because I've been doing it this way. And so that was tough. But also, we didn't have a chance so in terms of hiring philosophy, we had a chance to learn. And what we learned was that hiring based on culture was what really mattered. And on the flip side, I think if I were to look for a company to work with, I would look for a culture that I wanted to be a part of. And not just the role, not just like, okay, I'm going to do this. I get to do this. It's like, okay, you get to do that, but this is not a very attractive culture to be a part of. Or it's a cool culture, but I just don't like these people, because you're going to have to work with them. And so that's going to be something I'm going to talk about in a bit of like what I think is important in a workplace environment. And if you were going to look for a place, a team to be a part of for the next few years, some things to look for. Let me talk a little bit about purpose, and then I'm going to get back to this whole workplace desirability, what to look for discussion. something that we thought about as we built our first few businesses was, like, why are we doing this? It's not just about what we're doing. And at Firespout, it was, great natural language processing to help you consume information. At Archimatrix, it was about performance that was affordable to serve the diabetes community. At Misfit, it's about building great wearable computing products. But that's more the what. It's not really the why. And we never really asked the why question in the last company. And I feel like I missed out on that whole discussion. And so at Misfit, we've been a lot more intentional about it. And the why has actually uncovered also the how. So for us, the why is our purpose. Like, why do we do Misfit? Is it, and to answer, because we want to make great wearable products, is not a great why. That's still the what. And the why, really, it's this. It's, for us, the why is to sustainably provide goods and services to enable communities to flourish. That's one. And two, to create opportunities to people to express their innate capacity for creativity and productivity in meaningful ways. Creative and meaningful work. And so this is the why, and this is actually in the very charter of our company. It's in every offer letter. So in the offer letter, we say, congratulations, here's your job, here's who you report to, this is how much we're going to pay you, and this is why we're doing it. Okay, and are you down with it? Please sign here if you're down with it. And here are our values. Are you down with that? Great. And so you need to sign off on those two things each and every one of our offers. So everybody in the company signs off. I don't know if they read it, but presumably they read it and they actually sign off on it. But it's actually pretty important because this is what drives us. When we raise money from venture capitalists, they see this. I mean, they probably don't. Their lawyers probably see it and say, what's up with this? Because it's very unusual to see this in some of the corporate documents. But everyone is, they're good with it. And we decided that we're not going to back off on this because this is the kind of company we want to build, not just one that's about profit maximization. What I learned also was, and like I said, it kind of cuts both ways, both as an employer and I guess as a potential employee, that it wasn't about smarts or it wasn't about experience, which we now actually use different terms for. We say skills, we say wisdom. So you want skills and wisdom, right? But what you actually also really want is cultural fit, people who share your values in a really deep way. And not just for why you do stuff, but how. And so for us, the core values is, I guess, kind of a how, or maybe it's a who, like this is who we are, or who we aspire to be. We aspire to be thoughtful. We aspire to be, I guess, a misfit, which means really just being unconventional, like always doing more with less. And probably the most controversial is being a servant leader. So big fans of Bill Pollard and the whole servant leadership thing. But it's turned out that as we've implemented this, it's actually quite challenging in terms of how we live it out. But it turns out that I think it turns out to actually work really well, actually, as a user-centric consumer products company. So traditional model, right? You've got the user here. You've got the doers, the engineers, scientists, designers, typical tech company. You got the team leads, and you got CEO. And usually the doers serve the team leads and serve the CEO, and the CEO serves at the invitation of the board of directors, traditional model. And at Misfit, what we've been able to set in place is one where you've got the CEO serving the team leads who serve the doers, and the doers serve the users. And we actually get to focus on users because it's actually our values enable that. And in fact, our board of directors, if you look on our website, they're listed as helpers. So that's right, John Scully is listed as a helper. And he's actually really cool with that. So that's the how. I think just to finish the thought that I started earlier, as you look for the teams and the projects, the things that you want to do after you graduate, after, for the next, or whether it may be your finished with school. How many undergraduates in here? Just okay, how many graduate students? Or okay, this is an undergraduate crowd, right? So as you look for, who's going to be looking for a job soon, or who's already got a job? Who's already landed something? All right, congrats for you. And who's going to be looking for a job in the next 6 months or so? Okay, so a lot of job seekers. Great. The I was asked to talk a little bit about that, and I think one of the things that's important at Misfit, one of the things that we try to establish is a culture where, an environment where it's actually really enjoyable to be at. And so for us, it's about 3 things. One is doing work that gives you a sense of purpose, that gives you meaning in what you do. Second is working with people you like. That's one of the lessons that I've learned from John. So my co-founder is John Scully. He's the ex-Apple guy, and I asked him, what's a golden bit of wisdom that you can share with, And he said, his thing was only work with people you like. And I used to think it was a luxury because it's John Scully, you can say that kind of thing. I have to work with people I don't like. That is just not true. That is not true. We have choices, and so that's the second thing. The third is actually around, and then what we say also at Misfit is being surrounded by good food. And so if you get to do work that gives you a sense of purpose, and you get to do it with people you like, and you're surrounded by good food, what amazing! What else would you want? And so we dreamed of having a workplace where it wouldn't seem like work. And if you can, and I think there are opportunities like that out there. There's always the grind, and you have to work. There's things you have to do that you aren't what you thought you'd be doing all the time. But so there'll always be tasks like that. But in looking for your next role, look for people you like to work with. Look for these for cultures that you want to be a part of. So. I want to leave you also with a few lessons learned over the years as a startup person, and maybe they're relevant to you, maybe not. Anyone thinking about doing a startup or working with a startup here? A few people, yeah? Seattle's got tech, right? So reputation, I think, if you learned this in school, you've been told this, it's actually really true. Your reputation is really important. And we would not have gotten funding for our second company or even our third company if it wasn't because of how we conducted ourselves. Being obsessive about culture, this is what I was just talking about. If you're doing a startup, being lean is really important. If you've heard of the Lean Startup, it's a great book. And that's really about being relentlessly focused on the user, thinking about the user, and standing up for what you believe. I know it sounds kind of trite, but if there was one thing that I learned from my last company, anything that I would have carried on to Misfit, and that is standing up for what we believe. And it's not just about standing up for your faith, because the chances of someone really, I guess there will be times when you'll be challenged for your faith and whatnot, but it's actually, I've found it to be relatively rare. It's kind of uncool to, make comments about people's faith at work. It's just I don't think that, maybe it happens in certain companies, but certainly not in the companies that I've been associated with. It doesn't mean blindly do whatever you want to do. You should listen, but in many ways, standing for what you believe, for me, has been important, because it actually comes from a lesson that one of my other mentors in Silicon Valley has told, and he said, this is probably a really bad quotation of him, but the things that you do that you shouldn't have done, you feel regret. You can feel regret for. But the things that you didn't do, things that you did that you shouldn't have, you can regret. The things that you didn't do that you should have done are inconsolable. And I think it's related to this thing that I've learned. So being lean, let me skip through this. And also, as you know, we are here to talk about faith and work integration. And I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to kind of end with this point, and that is, you know, people have asked, you know, so, okay, how does one integrate one's faith into work, and how is that relevant, and how's that been borne out in my life? And I think one of the things that I learned from my pastor back in Boston that I feel like I can just take with me now, and is relevant in not just the faith discussion, okay, is just not censoring yourself. You know, if someone asks me, you know, about my faith, I'm going to just tell them, like, how was your Sunday? I'm not going to say, oh, I had a great time with my wife and we went out in the morning. No, I went to church, had a great time worshiping God, and then we went back and did some more work, you know, and that's it. And I find that it really keeps for an environment that's open and transparent, and you know, people, I think people respect that. And so, let me, what I'd like to do is I'd like to engage you actually in the discussion around faith and work, and let you ask questions. But before doing that, I wanted to just have a quick chance to introduce the company that I'm currently at, because I know some of you were curious about that. So, a company I'm working with right now called Misfit Wearables. I think someone asked about how we came up with the name. We actually, it was the three of us, John, Sridhar, and myself, sitting around a table near Cupertino on October 5th, 2011, and we were thinking of a name for the company, and then the news of Steve Jobs dying flashed across the screens, and we actually decided to name it in, not quite as a tribute to him, but you know, in the spirit of unconventionality of that Apple commercial, "Here's to the crazy ones, the Misfits." So, also we were doing a wearables company, so Misfit would be a play on words, and it was also a fitness type of product, so that we were working on. And so we, so that's it. So we got venture funded. We did this crowdfunding campaign for our first product, the Shine, which is what I'm wearing right now. And by the way, I have one to give away. So for the best question asked, okay, or tweeted, and so we did this Indigo campaign, and it just went really well. We weren't sure if usually you do the Indigo the crowdfunding campaign, and then you get venture funding, but we did it the other way around because we were actually working on something else, which is what we're releasing next year, and we decided to just try our hand at this activity tracking market and do a crowdfunding campaign just to see how people would respond. Has anyone heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo? Has anyone backed any projects? A few, yeah. So it went by really well. We had a goal, $100,000, and we killed it. It was within 9.5 hours we hit our goal. It was the fastest campaign in history. And then so with that we decided to finish the product, and we launched it recently at the Apple Store. I'll skip through some of this, but our thought was, if you believe in evolution, then something may have gone terribly wrong with the advent of technology. And but perhaps wearables will bring some hope. And the question of why, and so why are we doing this whole wearables thing? It's because we believe that wearables 1.0 right now, Iron Man, is what we have now, and where it's heading is Invisible Man, technology blending more into your life. And that's why we designed Shine. This is the product I'm wearing right now. And we just, once again, really redesigned this category. It's a tiny little metal disc that lights up to tell your progress towards your daily activity goals, so your steps, calories, distance, that kind of thing. And when you go full circle, that means you're done for the day. It syncs with your iPhone, and you can wear it in a bunch of places. It also doubles as a watch, so I'm actually wearing it here, and it tells me the time. And you can wear it in a bunch of places, so not just your wrists or your shirt or whatever, but you can really clip it onto just about anywhere. I could put it onto my pants here. And now these people don't need activity trackers, they look, but they make the product look good. So you can wear it in a bunch of places, and to different occasions. I'm wearing it with a leather band here. You can wear it as a necklace. You can wear it swimming. So in a number of different places. So we've had a lot of fun making this product. And so that's what we're doing now. And it's actually sold at the Apple Store now, and so you can get it there, but you can get one here for free if you ask a really cool question. And I just wanted to have a more open-ended discussion about faith and work, because I'm actually curious about what you think about it and how you integrate it into your lives and how that's relevant for you, whether you're a Christian or not. And how you derive meaning from that. So, open for questions. So the question let me ask you is, how has faith been a part of your intellectual development? I mean, or if you've worked in a job before, how has that been operative in how you do things, and how has that shaped the decisions that you've made, whether it's work or at school? Any answers or points there? Yep, Shelby?
Yeah, I feel like one of the greatest opportunities we have is to reconcile people's desires for ambiguous things with the legitimate answer that God has. So I was working for a company where a colleague of mine loves tarot cards, and like at the center of that desire was a desire for spiritual direction, and got to talk to her about the power of prayer and effective prayer and God guiding me and leading me to Seattle and to a role here. And so I think it's not trying to cram our, this is the 8 bullet points I have for why I have faith in God and trying to make them see how it's valuable, but understanding the desires of their heart in the way that God has the legitimate answers to that.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. It's. I remember when I was just first learning about faith and work, about that discussion, and my first exposure to it was actually in Urbana, 2003, and I learned about. I actually stumbled onto an MBA Christian fellowship, and oh my gosh, Christian people who are believers, or business people who are believers. It's awesome. What a great idea. And I went and hung out with them and learned about it, and then I ate up the whole work and faith literature. And then I read about the typologies, business as missions, business and missions, business for missions. And I realized in the end that there really is one, and that is business as missions, because it is about it. Because at the end of the day, the question comes down to, I realized, what you do with profits. Because if you just make a lot of profit to fund a bunch of missionaries, or if you make a lot of profit and to just stuff in your pockets, those are decisions that we're making about, with business. But if you make a little less profit in order to do something socially responsible, you're actually kind of, in a sense, using up the potential profits to further that cause. So again, it's a decision on the use of profit. And so as I thought through that, it made me realize that it is about thinking more holistically and not just using the workplace as a podium, And so I can definitely relate to that. Yeah. Question or comment or answers? Yeah.
In Randy's book, it sometimes talks about how there's not just like the A and the B of sustainable business, there's kind of that messy middle that we as sustainable business members and Christians should kind of strive to find. It's not necessarily one way or the other. So I guess my question to you would be then, is there a situation you found that, striving for that sustainable business, striving for Christianity and business that you were able to find that messy middle instead of just A or B?
You know, that's a good question. I think a lot of times it's, let me try to compose a meaningful answer here. You know, what's that?
If not, it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's a good question because it actually comes up a fair amount. The notion of, you know, is it, if we do A, is it the right thing to do versus B, is it the wrong thing to do? And I was just sharing this over lunch when we were talking about what matters and I've had multiple discussions about this with my partner. He's Hindu, and we talked about, and we realized that really in the end it is actually how you conduct yourself. And oftentimes the decisions you make, yeah, you can decide to do, I mean, there are probably certain classes of decisions where doing certain things is clearly not a good thing to do versus not. But many of the decisions are actually kind of, they're not like that, you know. Many of the day-to-day decisions that you have to make it's, you know, you can end up in a good place in either way or a bad place in either, with either direction. But it's actually how you conduct it, you know. Like if you were to let someone go, is that, oh, should we let someone go or not? And you can say, well, not matching with cultural values, so I'm going to let them go. Or, dang it, we're going to stand by our values. We're going to be a forgiving company and let them, you know, believe in their ability to change or whatever. And in both ways, you know, you could end up in a positive place. But in the end, it's actually how you do it. So if you do decide to let someone go, it's actually about how do you preserve their dignity and how do you set them up for success later on. And really showing that you care. And that you're doing it because of whatever reasons, but it's actually because you care about them. And I find that that actually comes up a lot more often than just, you know, A or B, you know, good, bad. So, yeah. Yeah.
I actually had a question about the beginning when you were talking about how one of your companies was basically a failure. Did you ever feel like you didn't want to go on with what your project was? And if so, do you have any advice of what to do when something doesn't go the way you want it to?
Yeah, all the time. So for the first company, we encountered all sorts of technical difficulties, and it was a lot of disappointments because we would achieve like what we thought was monumental technical success. You know, we came up with algorithms to automatically summarize text. You know, it seemed unreal, and how cool is that? But it just turned out that people didn't want that product at that time. They wanted a better search engine, and so very disappointing, you know, and so definitely can relate to that feeling of, you know, gosh, maybe we should just throw in the towel and just get a job like everybody else, you know. And I don't know if there's much advice I can give there other than, because on the one side, it goes back to the previous comment. On the one side, we could just be bullheaded and keep doing, you know, not changing. We're going to just never give up, right? But sometimes it's actually better to pivot and to try something else, you know. But then again, the notion of a pivot means you're starting here and going here. It only swings a certain amount, you know. You know, you don't want to use pivots as an excuse to just be random and just not be committal either. And so again, I think it ends up being my thing is how you conduct yourself throughout that process, you know, and have you really considered have you really given it your all, and have you really given it a fair shot? You know, for us it was, we didn't give up, but we just ran out of money as a company, so that made things easier. You know, so.
I remember that you mentioned forward, and I know he talks a lot about the respect you have to have for your employees, because
Yeah.
they're all made in the Imago Dei.
Yeah.
So how would you say like those beliefs have transcended into your business practices, or multiple businesses you've established?
Respect, yeah. Well, you know, we have it in the notion of our servant leadership model. Okay, so the servant leadership thing really works, I have to say, because it really turns upside down a lot of the issues around that. When it comes down to it, when you look at it, it really comes down to egos. And if you can help really deal with that issue of egos and the politics that it creates as a result, and really nip it from the beginning, it's actually pretty powerful, you know. And respect can come from that, you know. I mean, we live it out in symbolic ways and in really, and I think some really real ways, you know. Like the example I always give, because it's, you know, the most, you know, jarring example, and in some ways is, you know, like if you're traveling and you get upgraded and you're the team lead, you travel a lot, so you have a lot of status, you get upgraded, you're actually expected to give up your seat to your team members. It's not even like, oh, you're doing a nice thing, that's just what you're supposed to do. Or like the entry level folks always get the best hardware, for example. And so, I think when people get that kind of treatment, they see the team leads living that out, it actually really, I think it sets a different tone, you know. And so yeah, I'm all for respecting employees. I mean, who doesn't want to be respected, right? So.
What's your view of corporate social responsibility, and how does that play out in your business?
You know you live in a fallen world when you have to have departments with that name, and when you have to kind of make people do it, you know, and so it almost seems. But I think it's I'm glad that kind of exists, you know, that someone's thinking about that. Yeah, I don't really have much comment beyond that. I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad someone's doing it. I wonder sometimes whether, you know, the opposite side of it is that some people criticize it because some of these programs, because it looks like they're just trying to get better, more press, and it's about PR and not actually caring or whatever. But I don't know if that's the case. I think people are genuinely interested in these programs. But ultimately, I think what will be powerful and impactful is if these programs can ask the why questions and really get people to wonder, why are we doing this? Is it just to make us feel better and get more press, or is it actually because we want to transform the world and make an impact, you know? So, and I don't know if people are asking those questions. Maybe you're not allowed to. Maybe HR doesn't let you ask those kind of questions.
So my question's very related to the one that she asked you. And it seems like there's probably a lot of people who had a very similar idea to Misfit Wearables, of something that you can wear that tracks, you know, and sync to your phone.
Yeah.
And the difference is that you went for it and jumped in, kind of went into the deep end, and dove in after the big idea. So my question is kind of after, like particularly after you sort of classified your first company as a failure, like what socially was in place that kind of enabled you to, that gave you the support to, like to go past that first failure and jump in again with the same people, and to kind of, that enabled you to like stand up for what you believe in and not trust the technical experts that are telling you it can't happen, and really just to dream big and go for it.
I think one of the things that Sridhar and I had always been very obsessed about and we really longed to do were to come up with 10x solutions. And we knew that we would have a hard time doing that in any context other than in a startup, where we could dream big and we could attempt the audacious. You know, Shine is just opportunistic. You know, we're trying, so we're trying to, you know, we're trying to build a solid financial foundation for the company because of this trend around activity tracking. But some of the projects that we are attempting, they are kind of crazy. They're kind of more of the moonshot type of things. And so I think it's unless you're at a place like Tesla or working for Elon Musk, or you're at SpaceX or at Google, certain parts of Google, you know, it's hard to find opportunities like that. And that's just what Sridhar and I decided to do. We wanted to attempt to solve some of those problems, you know.
So was that an intentional, like, cultural thing with the first company that you sort of said we want to maintain a small company to dream big?
Yeah. So the first company was less intentional, I have to say. If I had to admit it, I would say we did not think through those things. We did not think through culture. It didn't even occur to us that culture, what is that? That's like going to foreign countries and eating cool food. No, we didn't even think about the notion of culture back then. We didn't really think about it that much in the second company either. We tried to, but we would forget to really keep talking about it. So the first company was more, I just happened to be doing my PhD in this area, and maybe I can commercialize it. So again, opportunism to some extent there. But as we had a chance to reflect and as we went through a lot of failures and as we learned from them and, I can't believe we did it this way, what did we learn from that? And when we asked the questions, what did we learn? It actually made us think about some of the bigger questions, Because a lot of times when you're in a startup or when you're just a busy work environment, startup or not, you forget to ask those questions. You forget to reflect on why am I doing this? This is the first time we actually asked, why are we doing Misfit? And it is not to make great wearable computing products. That is what we do, and so it's cool. It's actually, and it's neat to involve people, the employees, to talk about it, so we have a company, an all-hands company meeting every month, where we involve everyone, both the Vietnamese team. So part of it is based in Vietnam. That's the other thing. Sorry, I forgot to tell you about that. So 2/3 of our company is based in Vietnam, and there we're living out kind of and we're not doing it for mercy, trying to create jobs for people. We're not just doing that. We're not doing it because it's cheap. Okay, we're doing it because we found amazing talent there, for whom we can create amazingly meaningful work. And it's just been a great opportunity for us to express that second point of creating meaningful work. And so every month, all of us, Vietnam and US, we get on one giant video call, and we talk about these values and what's meaningful and what each of these values mean to us and why we're doing it. We talk about, creating meaningful work. We talk about enabling people to flourish. Is what we are doing enable people to flourish? Does Shine enable flourishing? Yes, it does. The goal, the dream is to make it, is to inspire people to be more active so that we can help not bankrupt the healthcare system. Just 10% more activity will save tens of billions of dollars off of the healthcare bill. We're at 18% of our GDP in terms of spend for healthcare. That is absolutely unsustainable. And so, and just a little bit more physical activity, do the trick. Yep.
I'm not directing this at your company specifically, but more of the idea of manufacturing goods as a whole. But as a member of a company that does manufacture products, how do you feel about some of the less than stellar working conditions in a lot of other countries in which America gets our products from? And how should we respond to it as a Christian community?
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know how to answer that other than try to be mindful of it, I guess. We manufacture everything in Korea. And there's a reason, and part of it is, again, we're somewhat opportunistic because Korea cranks out awesome quality. Part of it is because the conditions that people work in are actually really good, and the labor laws are treat people really well. Sometimes it's tough for businesses actually, but I actually find that in the end you get what you deserve. You reap what you sow in a sense. You don't pay people very much for something, you're not going to get very good quality necessarily. And so for us, our focus has been a lot on quality. It's made of aircraft grade aluminum. It's not made of cheap plastic. It's hand assembled, and it's hand carved out of metal. It's a little bit more expensive, but you get what you pay for. And so I guess I don't know if there is there are a number of responses I can think of, but in the end, one response is to buy really high quality stuff, and don't get a lot of junk, I guess, Nicole?
How have things changed, either just with you or if at all, since your faith was kind of more publicly declared when you were written about in Christianity Today?
either yourself or with your business?
I don't know if anything's really changed. I was really delighted to be outed, because I feel like I've never really made a public confession of my faith. I mean, I would go to church and stuff. People know I'm a Christian, but it was an honor to be to be able to talk about faith and work there. I think I think the best part is when people ask questions. I've had people ask questions like, "Man, that servant leadership thing, that's so crazy. I can't believe you guys do that. That's awesome material. Where'd you get that?" And then we can talk about what it means to where the first is the last and the last should be the first, and how that actually plays out, and why that's actually very practical, and how like egos absolutely are so illegal in the company. Like we just don't have that. You can't have that at Misfit, okay? And that really helps deal with a lot of I don't know. Like I said, some of the I remember when in my last couple companies, egos were like the source of so many political tensions. If you think about it, that's where a lot of it starts. Is anyways, yeah. Please.
You earlier asked how faith would impact you at the workplace.
Yeah.
I think what I saw, because I wasn't a Christian my whole life, was that when I became a Christian, all of a sudden my coworkers, I wasn't competing. It wasn't a competition.
Right.
You serve. And then with your bosses, it wasn't about pleasing your boss, because you had somebody higher than him. You have God. So you're there to please him. So it changes your attitudes.
Mm.
I don't know if that's what you were looking for.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's when you have a higher authority to answer to, a lot of things fall into you get a different kind of perspective. Yeah.
What's your greatest challenge as a leader of this company?
Greatest challenge.
Being a leader of so many people and so many people are looking up to you. What do you find is the greatest challenge there?
Well, there's a lot of challenges, but I think, gosh, I'll name a few, and I don't know if I can't give you an ordering for it. But just being fair, being really, there's a lot of competing kind of desires and tensions, and just being fair, and to when there's a lot of competing interests. I think that's one. I think another is wise use of resources and time, especially time. Startups you measure your burn rate. You learn from the lean startup that you measure your burn rate not in terms of how many dollars you have left, but how many pivots you have left, how many months. It's not a matter of how many months or dollars, but how many times you can change your business so that you can be successful. And so it comes out, just struggling to have good judgment a lot of the time. Being fair, having good judgment, and also in a sense, I guess it's not hard, but it's important to do. It turns out to not be that hard, because if you actually believe it, then it's not that hard. But really sticking to your values and to your cultural, to the cultural expectations that you've set. So we've had to let go of people who are really star performers who did not match our cultural values. They were not a servant leader, but they were an amazing salesperson. No, that is, you definitely do not want, so we had to let that person go. And people would say, oh, that was such a hard decision to do, to take. And we said, no, it wasn't actually, not at all. So there was someone in the back there, so, yep.
As your company grows, how do you keep that CEO on the bottom of the priorities structure going to avoid something ending up like Hostess, where all the big top managers just fail shit all the money? What kind of steps do you take to keep that on track?
Oh, that's a good question. Man, that might be a candidate for a shine here. It is a struggle, because at the end of the day, we want a culture where everyone dives to take the lowest job. That's what we aspire to have in the company. We're not really there yet, but that's where we like to be. But then if you do that, then is it a good use of time and resources, right? That's really what you're asking. And I don't really have a good answer to that, except that there is also the counterbalance expectation that you make good use of your time. You know, that because there's basically it comes down to an intention and what the heart condition is of the person. You know, like if I'm not wanting to take out the trash because I just don't want to, because I don't take out the trash. I don't do laundry, I don't take out trash, I don't, do weekends. You know, that's a very different type of attitude, heart condition than look, I really, it's not a good use of my time. Let's do TaskRabbit and they'll do trash taking, and so I think it comes down to a constant examination of the heart condition of oneself, and also asking our team leads to do the same. And so one process that we've done that we're pretty fanatical about, and let me leave you, maybe we'll do 1 or 2 more questions, but then I'll leave you with this one exercise, maybe homework you might take on. This is something that Sridhar and I have done throughout our lives, and it's just been very impactful. Remember, he's not a believer, so it's fine, you can do it with anyone. But I definitely would recommend doing it with someone that you know really well, and someone that you feel really cares about you. Okay, so it's the cluelessness exercise. And so what Sridhar and I have done for 20 years, okay, for a long time, it's since college, right, is we did cluelessness, which is a mutual feedback session where we would tell each other, no holds barred, what either really annoyed us about the other person or something that the other person could grow on, could grow it. And so like if we were doing a feedback session, what's your name?
Eric.
Let's pretend we're like really good friends. I'd say, Eric, or maybe you'd give me feedback, and I would take the feedback but not be allowed to respond for at least 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, so you'd say, Sonny, you just talk too much, talk too fast, and yeah, and here's 2 examples, bang and bang. Okay, and here's how you can improve. Boom, boom. And I would not be able to respond. Okay, then I would say, Eric, you need to do the laundry a little bit more. Okay, yeah, and then you can't respond. Okay, and then at the next check-in 3 weeks from now, so at Misfit we do this religiously. Every 3 weeks, everybody gets feedback from their peer and from their direct reports, and the idea is to create a safe place to be able to give feedback. And so we've done this feedback session for every 2 weeks for like literally like 20 years. It's crazy. And we've learned so much about each other, and we have so much, because we know that we care about each other, we know that the feedback is authentic, and that's why it kind of only works with people that you care, where there's mutual caring relationship, because otherwise the feedback is actually anger and venting, which does not work. That's when feedback does not work. It's like, okay, you're just upset at me, I don't want to hear about it. And so find someone that who you care about and that cares about you. Try this feedback process. It's actually really powerful. It's transformative. It's really tough, but yeah, so it's, I give feedback, we write it down, you give feedback, I write it down. No response, we just nod, and then 2 or 3 weeks, we revisit how have we done on that, we do it again, rinse and repeat every 2 to 3 weeks. It's helped us learn about, me learn about myself and whatnot. All right, maybe 2 more questions, and then we'll, yep.
Sonny, in the 60s when I was in Benoit, I was struck by the spirituality of the Vietnamese. They didn't talk about God, they didn't talk about faith, it was built in. It was what they did, everything they did. 2 generations later, I returned to teach, and it's still there. My question is, how do you instill that into the Western U.S., into your workforce?
Spirituality. Gosh, I know some Christian CEOs who do Bible studies at work and prayer meetings at work. We don't do that. You could do it, and we have an environment where if you did that, it would be so cool if you did that, and nobody's going to get on your case about it. Not because we're just accepting of everything, but it's because we respect your space to be able to do that. If you wanted to do that, if that was what gave you a sense of purpose, do it. But we let it come through the how we treat each other, and through the values that we try to instill into our team leads, who try to instill it into the people that they hire and the people that they develop. So, you know, I don't think we are, so that's kind of how our approach to faith at work, you know, and less so the Bible studies at work type of thing. I mean, I think that could work too. It's just that, I don't know, I just don't know enough about the Bible to lead those studies, you know, so. All right, yeah.
Personally, what's been the most enjoyable part about being a part of these startups?
Most enjoyable part. I think getting to work. I know this is the most generic answer, but it's really true. But it's really getting to work with really cool people, really fun people that I would just normally want to hang out afterwards, you know, out of work. Anyway, I think that's kind of probably 60% of the answer, and then the other 40% was to really attempt to solve crazy problems, to really attempt to build 10x solutions that, you know, I don't know, you know, like we tried to make a glucose meter that was half the price at twice the performance by 2 kids who didn't know anything, you know, and that was really fun. That was okay. So that's only 4x, I guess, but you know, it was fun, and then being told that you couldn't do it all along. That's kind of fun. So attempting to solve audacious problems, working with really cool people. So I think I'm going to give this shine to Eric, okay? Because I really enjoyed that. So this is what it looks like. You can. Here you go. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Hope you have an iPhone. Okay, cool.